Venezuela is facing its worst economic crisis in decades. There are food shortages and water outages that have sparked rioting across the country. Inflation is estimated to be the highest in the world at around 500% and rising. Worse still, infant mortality is rising by 20%. There are constant blackouts with reports that neurosurgeons are finishing operations with only the light from their smartphones. This is a far cry from a decade ago when Venezuela was the richest country in South America and its socialist leader, the swashbuckling former paratrooper Hugo Chavez, was determined to improve the lives of the country's poorest. And he had the money to do it, all because of one commodity, oil. But more specifically, the price of that oil. Venezuela has the world's largest proven oil reserves and is a major oil exporter. In fact, the black stuff accounts for 95% of its total export. So, throughout the 2000s, during the oil boom, Venezuela was in a strong financial position. However, all that changed in 2014. Following Chavez's death a year earlier, the oil price that the government was so heavily dependent on dropped by half in 6 months. The decline in the price of oil is a well-known fact. So why then has Venezuela's economy seen such a violent and prolonged reaction while other oil-producing nations haven't? To answer that question, we have to go back to when Venezuela's problems really started, 2003. That year, there was an oil workers' strike, brought about by opposition leaders in an attempt to overthrow Chavez's government. It meant the country stopped producing oil and therefore stopped making money. It was a critical time for Chavez. The country needed to keep importing, but it was facing a perfect storm. Not only a collapsing oil price, but also a collapsing currency versus the dollar. On the advice of the late Fidel Castro, Chavez decided to fix the exchange rate in order to keep the whole economy stable. Not only that, but he brought in a rule which meant that if you wanted dollars, you had to buy them from the government. And this is the moment where many argue Venezuela's economic time bomb started ticking, because Chavez's emergency economic plan is still in place today. But for years this wasn't a problem, as the price of oil continued to rise, filling the government's pockets. Jump forward to 2013 and El Comandante himself, Hugo Chavez, died. His former finance minister, Nicolás Maduro, became president, promising to keep Chavez's economic legacy alive. But a year later comes the dramatic drop in the price of oil. So new President Maduro went to OPEC to try and convince the other members to cut production, to help shore up prices, but they couldn't agree. For years, Chavez's legacy was all about offering subsidies to the poor. And in that time, Venezuela overspent their oil revenue. So, within the 6 months of the price drop, there was a huge shortage of dollars, essential for the country to function. Because of the shortage, the government refused to sell their dollars unless it was absolutely necessary. In order to keep providing subsidized gasoline and services in healthcare, housing and education, the government pegged the official exchange rate at 6 bolivars to $1. That led to a massive explosion in black market currency trading. Less dollars meant its currency black market value shot up. So now there's different prices in different markets, and many Venezuelans took advantage. So people would scam the government into selling them dollars at the official exchange rate, for a holiday to America for instance. But instead of going abroad, they would actually sell those dollars on the black market for a much higher price, making them a small fortune. Rather than accept currency market forces, the government kept its peg and continued to borrow and print more money. As a result, inflation soared. To hide how bad the economy really was becoming, the government stopped reporting inflation data, but across the country the price of goods continued to rise, and price controls did little to help. Now, in 2016, Venezuelans are facing a situation akin to the Weimar Republic in Germany. Store owners are weighing money instead of counting the notes. And not only going up in price, but staples such as rice, milk and consumer goods like toilet paper and condoms are also becoming a rarity, leading to people standing for hours in long lines at stores. Under pressure to act, President Maduro has brought in new measures. School days and office hours have been cut, borders have been temporarily closed to stop smuggling, and the 100 Bolivar note has been taken out of service, and new higher denominated notes are being introduced. Even more poignant, Christmas toys have been seized from big retailers and distributed to the poor. And throughout the economic and political turmoil, of course, Venezuela is still exporting billions of dollars worth of oil, but it's not enough to help pay for the government's ongoing subsidies. Some are hoping that OPEC's recent agreement to slash production will keep pushing oil prices higher, enough at least to ward off the very worst of Venezuela's economic problems. But most analysts agree the country needs to diversify away from its reliance on a single commodity. And ultimately, it's up to the country's lawmakers to agree on how best to implement those much-needed reforms in order to bring about change.
Still watching? Perfect. Click here to watch another great video from CNBC International. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.